Hey there, TRASTRA fans. So if you've been in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency space for a while, you've probably heard of Peter Van Valkenburgh's testimony at a congressional hearing 6 years ago in 2018. It's often hailed as one of the best, if not the best, explanations of Bitcoin ever given. Now, again, that was 6 years ago, back in October 2018. But every now and then when I'm scrolling through YouTube, it pops in my timeline because it's so popular. It's got millions of views. It's featured on multiple channels. So a few days ago, I thought maybe it's time to watch it again and see if it still holds water. Does a 6-year-old explanation of Bitcoin delivered by one of the sharpest minds and arguably the best, the most eloquent speaker in the cryptocurrency space still stand up in 2024? And more importantly, does it hold up after everything that's happened since 2018? After all the wild ups and downs, all the volatility, the crashes, the hacks, and all that in the Bitcoin space? At first, I thought revisiting this would be a tedious exercise, but the deeper I dove into it, the more fascinating it became. A real excursion into the past, back to a time when the hope that Bitcoin and crypto could truly challenge the financial system still burned brightly. So let's dig into this testimony together and see if it's still relevant today.
My name is Peter Van Valkenburgh, and I'm the Director of Research at Coin Center, an independent nonprofit focused on the public policy issues affecting cryptocurrency and public blockchain networks. What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the world's first cryptocurrency, and it works because of the world's first public blockchain network.
Well, yes, declaratively, Bitcoin is the world's first cryptocurrency, but factually speaking, it's not real currency, hence it doesn't work as one. I don't want to get into this tired old discussion about whether or not Bitcoin is money. Thank the Christ it's not. It still is not being used as a unit of account. Neither suppliers nor retailers are pricing their goods in Bitcoin. There are some attempts to allow people to pay taxes in Bitcoin, but they look more like experimenting than systematic measure. It's not being used as a medium of exchange for obvious reasons. Why would you pay for something with a highly speculative asset? For that reason alone, Bitcoin remains highly illiquid. About 70% of it is buried in static wallets, so it definitely doesn't work as currency.
What does Bitcoin do? It's simple. It lets you send and receive value to and from anyone in the world using nothing more than a computer and an internet connection.
Again, technically still kind of true, but unless you're buying cocaine from a Mexican drug cartel using an anonymous wallet, you definitely need more than a computer and internet for a Bitcoin transaction. You're going to have to go through an entire KYC process similar to the one you have to endure opening a bank account. You can use an anonymous wallet to transfer value denominated in Bitcoin, no doubt, but good luck cashing out that value to a dollar or euro account at a legitimate bank.
Now, why is it revolutionary? Because unlike every other tool for sending money over the internet, it works without the need to trust a middleman. The lack of any corporation in between means that Bitcoin is the world's first public digital payments infrastructure. And by public, I simply mean available to all and not owned by any single entity.
Oh man, this argument in my view is full of holes, especially in 2024. Bitcoin does enable peer-to-peer transactions without traditional intermediaries, but the reality is much more complex. And while Bitcoin's blockchain allows for direct transactions without a central authority, the broader ecosystem introduces multiple layers of intermediation. Users typically rely on exchanges to buy or sell Bitcoin, on-off ramps to convert fiat currencies, wallet providers for storage and management, payment processors to facilitate merchant transactions definitely want their cut. So each step incurs fees and requires intermediaries, from verifying accounts to validating transactions on the blockchain, and each and every participant in this process wants to get paid. Some may argue that these intermediaries are decentralized, highlighting their independence from any single state authority. Well, I have a problem with this as well. When it comes to account verification, cryptocurrency platforms are bound by specific state authorities depending on the jurisdiction and must comply with concrete regulations and possess certain licenses before offering banking or other financial services in the financial sector. So the bottom line here is that intermediaries are always going to be necessary when it comes to providing services, any service. You need a service platform, a product owner, someone to guarantee the product, and someone to provide customer support. If something goes wrong, there must be a way to seek legal recourse, and so on and so forth.
Anyone, regardless of their nationality, race, religion, gender, sex, or creditworthiness, can for absolutely no cost create a Bitcoin address in order to receive payments digitally. Bitcoin is the world's first globally accessible public money.
Oh man, again with the public money, Bitcoin is not a viable unit of account, as prices are rarely denominated in Bitcoin, probably never. It's not an effective medium of exchange, as people seldom transact with it for everyday goods and services. Economies do not operate on Bitcoin, and those who have attempted to adopt it have faced significant challenges, often reversing their efforts and experiencing the negative consequences. So calling Bitcoin money seems like a stretch, especially in 2024. Instead, describing it as a speculative digital asset or technological innovation with specific use cases is more accurate.
Is it perfect? No. Neither was email when it was invented in 1972.
So I think it's highly disingenuous to compare Bitcoin in 2018, which was the peak of the ICO boom, and early email in 1972 when it was a purely academic exercise, although we could trace the origins of email back to the 60s. But that's beside the point here. My major problem with this argument is that in 2018, Bitcoin was already being touted as a major success. At the time, if you remember, there wasn't a single startup or tech company that didn't highlight its blockchain capabilities. I mean, by 2013, 5 years before Van Valkenburgh's testimony, Bitcoin had already started gaining momentum with financial media. The Chinese grabbed onto it. First exchanges like Mt. Gox and BTC China demonstrated its potential as an interesting medium. Let's call it that, interesting medium. So it was already pretty successful, but then came the Mt. Gox hack, Bitcoin was on the decline, and it took the pandemic and sailors' enthusiasm to fling it from 6 to 60.
And Bitcoin is just the beginning. If we can replace private payments infrastructure, then we can replace other private choke points to human interaction as well.
I think knowing what we know about Bitcoin and private choke points on human interactions today in 2024, I think it's fair to say that this argument for Bitcoin aged horribly. Multiple crashes and implosions from Mt. Gox to Terra to FTX to Celsius to BlockFi. Miners are now concentrated in a few massive pools. Exchanges are fully regulated with users handing over IDs like they're opening a traditional bank account. Bitcoin is part of Wall Street now with ETFs and institutional investors dominating the scene. And then there's Trump, the $130 million elections, and the Bitcoin Reserve Fund. Jesus. So it's safe to say that the dream of peer-to-peer value transfer outside of any centralized financial system is pretty much dead.
Why should we want to build more public infrastructure? Why should we embrace blockchains over corporate intermediaries? Why should we tolerate their inefficiencies and work to make them better? Why should we want the pioneers of this technology here in the United States and not fleeing overseas?
And then Peter Van Valkenburgh resorts to the scaremongering tactic, listing every hack and failure imaginable to argue that blockchain is the answer to all the technological ills of modern society. I mean, it's a narrative that doesn't really hold up to scrutiny.
Increasingly, physical machines are being connected to the internet to augment their capabilities. They're wired through servers that are owned and maintained by private and trusted intermediaries, the so-called Internet of Things.
I mean, from pacemakers being hacked to low-level employees at an Indian bank certifying fraudulent SWIFT messages, it's a litany of issues far beyond what blockchain could ever hope to solve. Edward Snowden's revelations in 2013 already painted a grim picture of how privacy is being eroded by technology. Fast forward to 2024, and with AI, smart devices, and digital assistants recording and watching us at all times, the idea that we can eliminate single points of failure is laughable. We're creating more points of failure every day, more devices, more software vulnerabilities, more ways for bad actors to exploit our systems. The problem isn't just our technology, it's our Stone Age brain struggling to manage a hyper-advanced digital world. Scaling back rather than doubling down on blockchain as a panacea might be our best hope. And as for the cry for regulation, the clear rules would stabilize the crypto market and transform it from the digital Wild West into a new revolution of fintech. Well, John Oliver put it best.
And I know that we usually like to point to a solution at the end of our stories, and that often means calling for more regulation, but I'm not sure that's a good idea here. The danger is regulation might give this sector more legitimacy. It'll make a risky investment look safe when it is clearly not, and that in turn might entice banks to start getting more involved in crypto, giving the sector even more legitimacy and also exposing all of us to its volatility. It really says a lot that one of the leading advocates for the government to strongly regulate crypto was Sam Bankman-Fried.
The technology is not yet ready to answer all of those questions today, but it is our best hope. And as with the internet in the 1990s, we need a light-touch, pro-innovation policy to ensure that these innovations flourish in America for the benefit and security of all Americans.
In with a bang, out with a whimper. You spend so much time painting Bitcoin and blockchain as global technologies, tools meant to empower everyone from a farmer in Bangladesh to a coal miner in Poland, technologies whose beauty lies in their decentralization, free from the grip of any central authority, and yet it ends with what can only be described as a Trumpian appeal, that innovation must stay in America for the benefit of Americans. Such a strange and really kind of worrisome pivot, undermining pretty much the very premise of Bitcoin as a borderless, decentralized system. Yet, 6 years later, I can't help but see this as an oddly prophetic. Whether intentionally or not, Van Valkenburgh seemed to predict the co-opting of Bitcoin by powerful interests. We're watching it in real time as Bitcoin is shifting from its initial promise to becoming a tool for one of the largest upward wealth transfers in history, solidifying the power of the few rather than empowering the many. So, knowing what we know about Bitcoin today, how would we define it? After all, it's been 16 years since it first appeared, so let's just agree it's no longer in its kiddie days. comparing it to email's evolution, if Bitcoin were following a similar timeline, we'd be looking at something like email in the mid to late 80s. Back then, email was already, ready for prime time, the tech was functional, businesses were using it, and the groundwork for widespread adoption was laid. Sure, there were some kinks to work out, but at that point, email wasn't some fringe experiment, it was the real deal. We've got no excuses left. It's no longer some misunderstood, mysterious enigma anymore. The information is out there, endless books, articles, documentaries, you name it. Personally, I've gone down every rabbit hole, and I think we're past the point of saying we just don't know enough. So, again, how do we define it? Well, to me, Bitcoin feels like a digital commodity. The U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission seems to think so, and honestly, they've got a solid case. Bitcoin acts like a commodity. Essentially, it's a manufactured good. It's interchangeable, just like wheat or corn, and its price is driven by supply and demand, and of course, whatever Elon Musk tweets at the moment. That's a pretty grounded way of looking at it in 2024, as opposed to the Valkenburgh's definition, which in my view is very much outdated. Well, the one thing I totally agree with Peter is that Bitcoin wasn't perfect back then. It still isn't. But it's definitely not the same as it was back then. It's grown up, and so should our perspective. And hey, if you have any thoughts on this, hit the comments. I'm all ears. With that, I'm going to leave you. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and share our content, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.